Okay. So you anchored it here.
Yeah, it's because of all this shit.
Oh, and this mask is kind of messing with you.
It's like fucking side.
Yeah, so you just gonna have to. I don't think there's anything there that is attached. Yeah, and see, these are like. And this is going just over the door seam, hey?
Yep, just like touching.
Cool. Thanks. This has to stay because that's where the hole starts.
Yeah, that's.
We might even lose some holes because of the weeding. I wasn't really thorough.
The what, sir?
The weeding.
Oh.
Yeah. So basic squeegee technique is your basic application tool. You should use a buffer.
Do we have a buff still? Or?
It's less noticeable with a print, but it's here. You have that's a buffer. Ah.
Oh, I see. When you say buffer, I think of that. I don't think this has a buffer.
This is a buffer, yeah. Well, it's the same thing. It's just felt, right?
Yeah.
It's meant to.
No, I get it, but I just to me.
I didn't even know these existed until I came here. So you got a wrinkle form in here.
Yeah.
Basic. What I noticed, you're gonna love this. I'm gonna criticize you. Everything that you do. Your squeegee technique can be a little sloppy, which is usually fine, but sometimes it creates wrinkles and issues, and you don't notice until it's too late. You're like, damn, I'm working out all these wrinkles. What happened? Because the stretch was not like a nice, even technique, right? So it'll say have good light so you can, or angle yourself so you can see the reflections, and then you can see what you're doing wrong or right. And yeah, like the reflections will tell you everything. Move center out, especially for a big panel, like from the center out and then this center out. So like shuffling snow this way, down, but across your line, of course. Or if it's this way, center out. I like to hold my squeegee at a shallow angle, so not 90 degrees, maybe about that much, right? And you take about an inch at a time, 2 max. So the new vinyl you're taking with the squeegee should only be about this big, because if you do this, you'll just have all kinds of pockets and shit going on, right? And it also creates more wrinkles when you push, stretch into something this big, as opposed to this big. You're not having stretch, you're just having application. Goes really nicely. You have to have firm enough strokes that you're activating the glue, especially with Avery. It's still gonna take a setup or cure time. So there's still a point in time which it's safe to kind of pop it up, but you still need to activate the glue firmly, and it needs to be as much as you can straight strokes, right? And so if your base concept is straight strokes and your smaller, more qualified concept is feeding and guiding and speaking wrinkle, then you'll have basic good technique, and then you'll be able to adopt your technique to fit body lines and shapes. Because if there's a recess here and it's causing wrinkles, but there's it seems too tight over here, then you want to feed your extra vinyl into the tight areas. You're always feeding tension, or not tension, you're feeding wrinkles into tense areas to spread out the stretch. Because really, if you think of it as extra vinyl, you have extra over here and not enough over here, you're actually sending extra vinyl that way. Yeah, you're borrowing from over here and putting over here, and that's going to help your technique. That's the seam. Yeah, so that, and I mean, it's way easier to teach by example, so I can be like, look what happens when I do this. But if you have that in your mind, then it's easier to apply later on when you need it, right? So you can keep going. I'm also doing this for the camera. But literally, I remember the first time I squeegeed on a vehicle, and Dave literally said, take an inch at a time with your squeegee, and I immediately took too much because I was just not used to, I don't have a precise technique at this point.
Yeah.
And you could see there was an air pocket, and the edge of the vinyl was exactly 4 inches wide. So like I literally had taken an entire squeegee, and that's how I missed an entire air pocket. And so it was perfect. He was like, that's exactly what you don't do. And he just like pulled it up, and I took it an inch at a time. And that way, all your wrinkles everything's more predictable at least. If you're gonna do everything predictably, then it's easier to fix. Or it's easier to do quickly and avoid problems. A lot of wrapping is avoiding problems, and a lot of it is fixing. But avoiding is always better.
Yeah, ideally is which one.
Okay, I will be back, guys. Just give me a call if you need anything.
All right.
$1 million.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, so since this sign is attached to this one, and it's kind of fucking around with the door handle, I'll show you how to work around
It could be a
it.
different
Yes. Don't be afraid to use heat, but do not squeegee hot vinyl.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
As
right.
always how you overstretch. As a rule, I mean, you'll get good enough where you're like, oh, this won't do any harm. But as a rule, you're always going to have a happier day if you wait for it to be cold. Unless you're needing the heat to stretch it.
Stretching.
That's different though. Yeah, feeding and guiding your excess vinyl into higher tension areas. Keep a shallow squeegee angle so it doesn't bunch up. That's a huge part of it. You're just like forcing too high of too steep of an angle, then it's just gonna bunch sideways. It's not actually gonna roll out nicely like waves. Also, especially if you are doing a problem area and you have already wrinkles and tension forming, something that is a basic technique, let's say this is a solid piece and it's bunching around something, squeegeeing the back and forth, right? So if it's back and forth, as opposed to like trying to force all the wrinkles one direction, now it's all gonna bunch up in one side, but if it's back and forth, or I do that half circle thing sometimes, so it's like this edge takes it this way, and then I flip the squeegee and I take it this way. That's so much easier on the wrinkles. They go out almost like
Kind of pushes it all
you're
over.
sweet talking them and taking them to dinner, and they're way more compliant after that. They're like, oh, okay. But if you go in one direction, they're like, you're right wing nut job. And they don't want to come back for a second date. Yeah. Not that I'm against the right. Everyone is though. Yeah, how's it going over there? Looks good. Make a habit of running your thumb over the edges, because that way, if you miss a tiny spot, the edge is always the lift zone. This is a lift zone, this is not. This is the middle of nowhere. This is the lift zone. So if you make a habit of running your finger over the edges, you'll always seal anything that is slightly not down, maybe not even visually. It's not visually.
Well, then you can also feel for any.
And you can feel for wrinkles and be like, oh, there's something here. Oh, I got a hair in the vinyl. That's where lighting helps too. But even down here, I can feel there's just a tiny little spot, so I just and now it's down. It's not going to lift. You're not going to get dirt in it.
I noticed here there's like some on his door already. There's like if it's
Yeah.
dropped
Oh,
it,
yeah.
so
It's probably like tar. A lot of stuff comes up
Shit.
from the road, sticks to
Shit's
to
on
trucks. It doesn't even show up in this.
No.
And if it did, it's cleanable. Just, actually, glue remover takes away most of that. Pulling your triangles, which is, you got a wrinkle coming this way, so you pull it in the perpendicular direction in a triangle, and now the wrinkle's gone. Yay! This is for the camera. Don't get ahead of yourself. Okay, so if you're going in a line like this, the whole line should raise at the same time. If you get ahead of yourself up here, and then you realize there's like kind of a pocket of air where you got a head over here, and you got behind over here, which doesn't apply here because there's an exit.
Yeah.
Now you're going to pull this back, or you're going to risk putting wrinkles in because your tension isn't even, right? It's not always a problem, especially if you've pulled your glass like you're supposed to, but getting ahead of yourself is a basic concept. that you want to avoid, it will always make your day better. So, since this is going over a door handle, let's take a look at our approaches. This is the flatness, and this is the problem.
Yes.
Luckily, since this is a print, we just have to cut out. Can you see that? The camera's struggling a little bit. Hello.
Light hit that top thing.
Yeah. So, this is all empty because it is just green. We can cut this out and pretend it never existed and lay it on later.
Okay.
It's great. I love it. This is why prints are way better. And so the goal being to get all of this to lay flat, and then you can apply it with an even tension. You don't have to worry about this at all. This isn't even an obstacle anymore because you've created an exit around it that is going to take care of all that tension for the rest of the sign. You want the sign to be flat if you can, always.
Yeah.
That's not the game of wrapping, but it's the aim
It just makes.
to avoid problems, unnecessary problems, of course. Now, since this is all attached, I'm going to cut it all out. It's not all going to land on the door handle, but that way I can lay it down later.
Yeah.
I'm always very careful and shallow with my cuts. Sorry if I talk over you. So that
You're not gonna.
is gonna. Yeah, good. That's how I record. I'm gonna cut this out a little bit. That's gonna help us to lay flat. No consequences. This does not register to this. It doesn't matter where it is.
No.
If it was a letter and they were like this after, now we've got a problem. But that's where we try to game plan around it in advance so that the text doesn't land on an obstacle, because you need to read it anyway. All of this is very, since you're experienced, you have all this basic experience, helping you to know this in advance.
Well, yeah, no, it's good to talk
Yeah.
about it.
If I could, I would cut all this right in half.
Yes.
And then I'd have one sign, and I'd have a second sign.
Yeah.
But I don't get to do that right now. I could cheat it in, but that's not necessary.
No.
We need to know how to deal with this anyway.
Right.
We can sort of treat it like one sign. So we can pull the paper down. No, actually,
Do you want to lay?
let's do the bottom first because you can pull the paper down from like here. Let's pull that up. Your mask is tearing, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. Always like think it through first and say to yourself, oh, actually, that's going to mess with everything. But I think we can cut below the handle. Right here. If this was one piece of vinyl, this would be a little high compared to here.
Yeah.
And you might, pulling the paper later on, might actually, this will get trapped in there. But this isn't one piece. These can all be cut apart, yeah. So there's no risk of having one whole piece kind of messed up. This also doesn't have to be perfectly flat because when the mask wrinkles, we're just going to peel it off because none of this is solid. Oh no, it's not going to do anything. You do want this to be as flat as possible. And then you go out, like a nice tension line if you can. It's fighting me, so I'm just going to cut it on the exit. There you go, that's the main, this is the main deal with masked things. Usually there's holes in it because it's masked. So if you can, in your mask gives you tension, because it will, this is a 3D object,
Yeah.
and mask is very 2D. You just cut it where you can, now you have an exit, no problems. Everyone goes home happy. Yeah, and you're squeegeeing starting on the flattest line that you can. That's exactly what you want to do. And you go down and I'll go up. And I've got some wrinkles here, I'll just work them out later. Once I peel the mask. I can probably do it right now. I can peel this right off too. Cool beans. Because really, our flat area is going to come around in a C. So since there's nothing over here, this is not really connected to anything, we're not going to create any wrinkles if we do this in a counterclockwise C, because this will stay flat, everything will be happy, and then whatever excess we have ending up right here, this overlap, this is not connected. So it'll just end up where it ends up. If it was one piece, we'd have to tent it all, because it has to be in one piece. Can't have wrinkles. But yeah. So,
okay, would you?
You know what you could also do?
Should we cut? Can I cut it here and then I can tuck that in? And shit?
Yes, that's a bit,
Is
essentially
this
what you'll
like
do.
liking it,
This
right?
is easier to line up if you just
Just kind of.
line it up
Hinge
like
it
that.
Because I want to get the mask off so I can tuck this in nice. Right?
Yes, yeah, and so, you know, that's not a bad mode of operations. Since we have enough bleed to go over this box line,
Yeah.
I would cut it like, cut off your excess.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's good for wraps. If it's bothering you, it's extra and it's creating wrinkles and pull,
Yeah.
cut off the excess. Now your life is easier. Always cut off excess if you can.
And then-
Always cut it off with a bleed, a generous bleed.
Yeah.
But if you have an extra foot of vinyl that is like fucking with your work, oh, I can't swear on YouTube. Can I? If it's messing with your work, you just cut it off, and then it's that much easier, right? It's like having long hair. You cut it off, and now you don't have to decide what to do with it because it's not there anymore.
It's gone.
It's great. I love it. Short hair was the best. Yeah. We don't have to game plan for this yet because it's tiled.
Yeah.
This is perfect. Seaming it right on the door seam means
Yeah,
there are no
I-
lines.
right,
No one
I
even knows that we printed in two pieces.
That's.
They might know up here because it curves back, but I think we still have enough bleed.
Oh yeah, there's.
Yeah.
Because the bleed hole actually comes up to include some of his bottom lip
Yeah.
and this green shit that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Then all that stuff in between will just, it's like we covered our tracks. There's no evidence there was even a problem.
We did that, right?
It just goes in the garbage. It's perfect. Sometimes, if there's big enough scraps, like if there's a big line here, I'd save it and just roll it up and give it to him. If he has this thin peel and it's just enough vinyl to like fix it on his own, he's gonna love us that much more. He's not gonna have to come back and pay for design, setup, install, vinyl. He'll have a little bit of extra. It might look a little patchy, but then he doesn't have a big hole in his duck's nose, and it looks that much more professional.
Yeah.
He'll love us for it. That sort of thing is good to do for clients, especially if you have dots and stuff, and they fall off, because that's what dots do.
Yeah.
Oh, we already has a dot that's cut for him, and he'll think we are the cat's meow. So this is a little cold right now. That's why it's fighting you. Yeah. So I would just heat this up because I can see there's stretch in it.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Would you cut it?
Yeah.
to relieve
So
the-
actually, the easiest way to fix this right now, it might not be like the most versatile, but this is all about case by case issues. Heat it up so that there's no extra space. Wait a second while it cools down. And squeegee it straight down like you would anything. And then whatever extra you have ending up over here, just cut it down the body line. I mean the door line. No one's not gonna know there's anything missing. You just cut it off, and there's no evidence that we murdered anybody. It's a really good time when you can just cut stuff off and it looks good, because that's where it cuts off anyway. That is the perfect scenario, but yeah, as a rule, you keep your line of tension going down. You squeegee towards or away from your obstacles as needed. And actually, it might not actually cause enough problems to matter, especially since this cuts off here. And you can just cut it off. And then you seal it with your thumb. It's done. You don't open the door and it rips in half. It's great.
Yeah.
Because that's happened.
Yes.
Usually it's
Free,
customer's fault.
yeah.
Customer comes in. Oh, I'm just going to open the door. I'm like, no! And then he doesn't listen. But that's okay. Great, perfect. We're actually done with this for now if we want, and then we can go in our C, starting over there, upward. So let's do that. Starting with our cutting off of excess, we can chop this because we don't need it. It's just there for us. Yep. Remember that paper is deceptive. So you'll be all, oh, cutting nice, and then it'll like wrinkle, and you'll cut your actual graphic. You'll be like, shit, how did I go so fast suddenly? So you just be careful. Let's take these down. Okay, now we've got a nice even line. Pull the paper. This is going to mess with the tension, but we're going to ignore it because we can. We're going to pretend this doesn't exist right now, so just rip that off. And I'm going to rip this off. This could all come off right here, but it's so much less likely you're going to get dirt on it, and you don't need it right now. And then also if it sticks early, you're not like ripping this in half while you're trying to manipulate that side. This makes it a separate sign. If you can chop things into separate signs before you need them, your life will be easier, right? So just try to pull some glass. So pull and stick in all the ways that seem to make you happy. Mask likes to fall off of vehicles, so it's good to have a magnet or something like this. You know, so it just doesn't flop over, touch itself, rip the vinyl in half, and then you're having a bad day. So start with your line of tension over here and work up. There's a lot of wrinkle in here, so probably you're gonna have to pull it eventually, but you know, get it there when you get there. I'm gonna start pulling this stuff. Yeah, that's just the glue line, really, because when you tweeted up to the paper before, it caused a tiny tension line, and the glue was pulling in that line just a little bit. We avoid tension for that reason, because it will actually create glue lines, but you can't completely avoid them unless you are Houdini or something. So I'm going to pull this off because it actually is messing with your tension. But actually, look at this. I have a nice pull tension here. I'm going to work this out while I'm pulling it. I think these will still come up with heat. But look at this. This is all messing with my tension, so I'm just going to get rid of it. I can. Oh, and remember this issue I had back here?
Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
Now I can pull this down and get rid of it. Because I don't like the look of that wrinkle. But all I have to do is pull from the closest exit. Always from the closest exit. And just get rid of my wrinkles. Apply, make sure everything's applied. That'll come out. Yeah, so this should be heated anytime you pull the vinyl up for any reason. Now they're stretching it, so we're gonna get rid of the stretch. No problems anymore. Wait till it's put down. Yeah, see how this paper is gonna, I don't have to worry about that right now, it's great. My life is easier. And so I'm going side to side, right? Because that'll work the wrinkles out better. Yeah, see this wants to wrinkle here, it's sealed. We'll heat it after. Keep going up on our line. I can see there's a bubble starting here. Oh, it's just not ready yet. Yeah, it's just and it's all threatening to wrinkle, but this is still very soft wrinkle. It'll roll out.
We got a lot of
A lot of exits coming up right away. So when this is a big flat side of a van, that's when stuff like that, you pay more attention to it, but really you're just having a gentle hand. And probably it'll be fine. The better you get at it, the more you can tell if that's the case. This is the body line. Body lines are a perfect way for you to go, am I caught all the way up to this point before I go over it somewhere over here? Am I getting ahead of myself? because it's a nice hard line. You can see if you're all caught up, and then you go over it and you don't have wrinkles here and not over here, right? Sorry. So, I can't take this mask off yet because this has some bubbles. But, yeah, make a habit of like coming back and forth in the light so you can see if the reflections are all happy. And doing this every so often. This isn't attached to any of this. I would like to not have to hand line it up, so I'm just going to pull this as I go. Make sure that it's, I can't pull the mask yet. That's where the mask kind of gets to be a pain. But you can pull off the extra because pulling excess makes your day better. And now you can kind of ignore it. This isn't an obstacle anymore. You can ignore it and squeegee over it. I'm going to go in here because that's sort of the body line. Make sure you don't go across it and tempt all that air into it. So it's a giant bubble. Go into it. That's called feeding. Bringing the vinyl into a space. And it looks like I need to reposition this a bit because I had a wrinkle on here. And I am a little ahead of myself, but that's okay because it's going to stop right there. And I'm going to keep going in my line this way because that is easiest. I'm going to stop about here because I can do that. I know I can do that. You know, you got, now you have, I went right up to the line. So now you actually have a good visual on where your trimming and your tucking is going to start. And we'll deal with that next. But first we'll apply everything since there's a nice piece of trim here. If you just tent this and start applying right here, you're not going to trim it and then be short because there's actually all this extra vinyl here that's going to cut. So if you cut it in the middle and tuck it on both sides, you still have enough, right? That trim is nice because it creates a bit of a forgiveness line for you. If it had to go straight to the seam and then start again immediately after, you have to pull this back and tuck it nice and tight. When you trim it off, you just about leave everything that you trimmed off. That's when you start getting into line-up issues, if you don't do it properly. So, still recording, cool. See how all this is waving like this?
Yeah.
I don't have to care because this is all broken up. So that's extra space I put into it. It's not going to get in my way. That's nice. And so a lot of this has to do with masked graphics when you have space and extra things going on other than just a straight sheet.
Yeah.
It actually creates, I think it solves more problems than it creates. So it's, overall it's easier, but it's a little less predictable. So it can be annoying, but if you know how to deal with it, then you're fine. I can't imagine doing a full cut vinyl graphic over like a connected cut thing over a whole car. I don't understand how that would go out. So, oh yeah, see how I squeegeed up to here and now there's kind of a tension line? That's a glue line that's going to form along this tension line. So maybe I'll release that tension for you. But what I'm going to do first, yeah, make sure it's all applied to the flat stuff first. We know how to trim a straight line on this solid sheet. So I'm going to start with the broken sheet because there's only some pieces that come into play here. And I want you to hold the camera so that they can see me. By the way, this knife likes to lose the blade. It just comes out of the cradle. So this isn't a good wrapping blade, but that's okay. I got all the flat stuff applied. So if I peeled off the fine stuff, it should stay. But don't peel the mask till you're trimmed, because otherwise you're going to lose all your integrity. I know the rubber stops here, so I'm going to stop trimming here and wait to see what happens to this corner, because this is going on paint, and I don't want it to be shortcutted. I know that this is all rubber trim along here, so can you grab this? And I'm going to, I don't know, point it at what I'm doing. Perfect. So this is all going to get trimmed out first. This connects to here, so I'm gonna start on this part. I know I'm on the rubber right now. If you don't know, that's where masking it in advance can help. I'm gonna stop just short of the rubber because I always give myself a trim.
The one
Buffer.
Filipino dude at the other shop there, he cut right into the person's the molding and stuff. And
Yeah,
It's
you gotta
bad.
you can't just cut right through the rubber.
No, it's
It is
bad.
a seal, but it's usually, knife is not gonna hurt rubber, it's too flexible.
yeah,
Just don't press hard.
yeah,
You don't need to, right? You just press as hard as you need to get the vinyl off. And so now I'm lifting this up to relieve the tension above it. I can lay this in way better. None of this is attached. I'm just gonna cut it back. None of this is attached. So now I've got my individual pieces all laying in. I'm gonna do this, make my life easier, whoops. Now you don't have any glue lines, it's just sitting on the window, waiting to get trimmed. See, now I was right, the paint comes all the way to here, and if you look from the outside, I was thinking, well, it's back here, it's actually way over here. So that's a good way to avoid that problem, is by being careful. So I'm gonna leave this attached to this sign over here, because it needs to lay in once the mask is off. So we'll just leave that there. We could, the mask doesn't really let you do much with it right now.
no. It's
So I'm gonna cut this tension back. I don't actually think this green is gonna reach the window. I think it's a little too much on the trim, maybe a little bit. But like, see how it wraps around the trim so much? Not much to save there, not gonna worry about it too much. So I'm gonna start cutting this rubber trim. See, this is how much rubber trim there is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cut it right in the middle, so you have lots on each side to tuck, because you gotta tuck in here, and you gotta tuck in here. You need a little extra vinyl to do that, so I'm gonna cut right down the middle. And here we go. All the way to the end in a straight line. Now you've got a straight line to tuck all below and above, and you can pop all your tension like this, so long as you don't touch it too much. Like too early, I mean. And we are laying on this trim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep the tension there, so we're going to have a tension line going this way.
Yeah.
But just like, try to do it in as straight a line as possible, because it's not very high off the truck.
No.
So you can just go side to side like usual, and get as far as you want in there. The basic concept for trimming is tuck, pop, tuck again with something skinnier, and then trim. So it's it's tuck, pop, tuck, and then it's trim. You will almost never get it all the way in on your first tuck. So you have to pop it and tuck it twice. That's always how you get an ideal trim. Tuck, pop, tuck, and then trim. Now, since this is, I have to check it because it likes to stop recording. But since this is not that high, if it was like this high and I just trimmed it like this, then all that, it would kind of come up short, because there wouldn't be enough vinyl to reach in.
Into that point,
But
right?
this isn't very high, and I have enough experience to go, you know what, I'll just trim it straight on this edge. It's sealed all the way to the edge.
Yeah.
I have a nice straight line I can see and feel, so I'm just going to take my knife and go straight. You should have a guide finger somewhere on the truck, because it helps your steadiness, and you go with your blade against
that.
your surface, right? I'm not going to cut myself if I do this.
No.
Maybe my finger, but not the truck.
Yeah.
You shouldn't keep too long of a blade, because then you're not tempted to go too deep and cut
And
the truck
get the window
or whatever it is that's
whatever.
underneath.
Yeah.
You just have short enough to work it
Against that
like
point,
this.
right?
You basically want to do this beginning to end, as least starts and stops as possible. I know I'm not cutting the plastic. I do feel the rubber getting in my way behind it, but I'm keeping a straight line, and I'm not angling my blade this way or this way.
Yeah.
I'm going straight
Kinda
across.
line
I'm
with
using
it.
this as a guide, yeah, and then I'm gonna go right down because I know this is a rubber trim. There's no paint, so there's no concerns about being shortcut. You know what a shortcut is?
Yep.
Yeah, and then, where's my,
You dropped behind you there.
and then you basically just lay this right in, right? No dirt's gonna get in it, the glue line's gonna be less noticeable, and you can see right away if you've made any mistakes. Like if there was a painted area and you were like, crap, I shortcut myself, you can start problem solving right away.
Okay.
But I like to like tuck this in nice, don't roll the windows up or down. While I'm at it, I'm gonna cut this, seal the edge with my finger, seal the edge of this. This is still slightly lifted, see this?
Yep.
I cut it and I did this and then I cut it, but you do this again after all the time. All the time you seal after with your finger, right?
Yeah.
Now that edge isn't gonna get dirt and lift over time and look like I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna deal with them right now, but now
You
they're all
have it.
done.
Start over.
Yeah, so this, you've kind of already tucked this, but we're still gonna do tuck, pop, tuck.
Okay.
So let me pop it the first time. See how a little bit of black's coming off? It's not the end of the world. There is a little water in here, so let's get a heat gun. Yeah, you just grab the heat gun.
That one won't be.
This isn't going to be very edited because it's so instruction heavy, so it's okay. You never want water to collect behind here. Chances are it got stuck in the crevice.
Yeah.
I can already see evaporating. If you try to tuck it and it comes out, if you try to tuck it and it comes out, you will immediately know it's wet. So at which point you're just going to pull it back and try to dry it out. Tucking it in when it's wet is never going to go your way. I'm going to take my buffer off because I want a nice taper edge, and I'm going to tuck it, making sure I'm not missing or tenting, nice and as steep as I kind of can. If you go too deep and it's catching on this other edge, you'll overstretch that right in there. As soon as you overstretch it, that edge is going to fail because there's not enough glue to hold it on, right? Overstretching means that you're spreading the glue out too thin behind it. That's nice and tight, but we have to pop it. So let's start in the middle because center out is good. And I'm gonna pop it. You can still see there's space back there it's not applied to. So I'm gonna do that in a couple inches at a time because it's a pretty tight tuck. And so I'm popping it, tucking it deeper, less overstretch, tucking it deeper, popping it, tucking it deeper. Now I can see that settling in much tighter. I can see that it's happy because there's no wrinkles and no pulling. And I'm gonna keep doing that this way. And then I have a nice straight line to trim underneath this rubber trim with my knife. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did for that up here. I'm going to keep a shorter blade because I know it's a pretty short recess. And I'm going to run my blade along here, but I'm going to err in the direction of the rubber, right? So I don't score the paint. I hold my elbow and my wrist at an angle that I know I can maintain through the whole thing. So if I hold it like this and it's actually angling my knife toward the paint, or if I do something where I draw my arm towards myself, it's actually changing the angle of the blade now. So I have to I'm gonna get up here where at an elevation that I can maintain. Yep. And I'm gonna come back towards myself, keep your blade at the exact same angle. You should be moving, not your hand. Your hand should stay stationary. I keep coming up on the rubber. And your body should move position to keep your hand stationary. And that way, the tip of your blade will stay in the same place. Yep. We get a nice even trim. Nice. I'm gonna go across this whole line. This matters more for paint wraps. Yeah. Because if a little bit of black shows through a yellow wrap, it's more noticeable.
It'll stand over.
You pull this off, but you pull it off gently, like, look, oh, I have a tag that it didn't cut all the way through right there. Now I didn't pull it off really fast and it ripped it in half. And I had a big old,
Stretch.
yeah. I just go over that spot again, nice and tight. It's because I came up on the rubber and started again. That's fine. You always want to trim twice instead of cutting the car the first time, right? You always trim twice instead of doing damage. That's okay to trim twice.
Yeah.
And then once you have tucked it, popped it, tucked it, and trimmed, you have to seal it. It's not done. Right now, this edge is still lifted. You always tuck it, or you tuck it again, but what you're doing is you're sealing the edge nice and tight. And there's no extra vinyl in here. That means if I shove my squeegee in here, I'm not overstretching anything. I'm going straight to the edge and it's sealing that edge down nice and tight. So once it's trimmed properly, you shouldn't have to worry about overstretching when you push your squeegee in. If you pushed your squeegee in the first tuck, you'd be overstretching all that extra vinyl in, and that glue would not
Yes,
hold.
I don't think I was able to show them that.
Yeah, this is basic. See, I put this down and now it's lifting again. So there's water back there. We're just gonna have to leave it.
Let
The
it
best
dry.
way to deal with this is to just wait till the end of the whole install, and then it'll probably dry out on its own, right? And you don't have to touch that. The more you touch that edge to peel it up, the more you're killing the glue. So I'm just gonna leave it for now.
Let it be.
And you want to go over the whole thing for 5 minutes at the end anyway.
Yes.
You never want to not do your once over, or you're gonna miss something obvious like this. And it'll peel in whatever weeks or days. I know this is all down, except for my trim edge, so I'm just gonna peel it off. Looks good. I know I cut it here, so it's not gonna rip my graphic in half. You always peel carefully. Seal your edges if you can, sometimes. You can trim all of that, like I said, tuck, pop, tuck, trim it and then seal it. But we don't have to do that right now. We'll do it in another video, in another castle. Your trim is in another castle. This can be trimmed according to the same rules. This can be trimmed on what we call an empty solid cut. I'll explain that in a second. And I always go over these recessed body lines with my finger to make sure I don't feel any bubbles, because that tenting, where that bubble forms underneath, is most common in the body lines, right? But for now, we just have to do this flat. That's the only thing remaining. It can come down, it doesn't have to attach, it doesn't have to line up. It's gonna be the easiest thing in the world, yay! So, let me just peel this up quickly. And I'm gonna put it down in the flat parts first, because that's how we're dealing with this obstacle. Thanks for being the camera holder.
The light is bright on there.
Yeah, it's a little strange lighting in here. It's the problem with bays. I'm gonna go up to this line because the rest of this can be done separately, of course. It's a different sign or whatever. Now I got to the corner, I've got tension, I can't go anymore. Easiest thing to do in this situation is to cut my exit. So this guy here, make sure you don't get the door handle. This can be done separately, la la la. We're gonna trim it there and we're gonna put this on so it looks nice, but it doesn't have to be very precise, obviously. You can, because all this, it's all cut out.
Right.
This one, you're gonna have to cut more tension before you can get all this down. But again, easiest exit right here. Get this flap down because it cuts off right there anyway.
Yeah.
And this I can do kind of on my own time. This is a separate piece because it's going on here.
Yeah.
So wherever it cuts off here, I'll show you how to trim around something like that so that this still looks like it's one piece, kind of trimmed around the door handle, because that is a quality thing. Some people would just hack it and then like patch it on, but if you don't want, you don't have to see a line here, so you don't want to.
No.
So you just trim properly. Something you can do at this point is peel off all the mask, because it doesn't matter anymore. See? Oh, whoops, I stretched it. I can put that back. I I was careless.
Ah.
But that's okay. We can fake it. Yeah, because it's just a weird green blob, right? So that's going to look something like that when we're done. All of this can come off. We're going to do this separately. It's all going to look nice. But that's the basics of this side. So let me get a video of sort of what it looks like now. That's basically applied, and it's basically trimmed or ready to trim. And it's going to look cool. Yeah.